First of all, congratulations, Gaurav. And first of all, I'll be asking some questions which are not very conventional type. Okay. The civil services examination is called the mother of all exams. Do you think it is right to put it in that perspective or in that way rather?
It's a mother of all the exams. I have given so many exams, like most of the top level exams in this country, and this is the most difficult exam of them all.
Why you say like that?
And the reason is, there are basically two reasons. One is the length of this exam. It carries on for the entire year. You have to prepare for like entire year before that. So like really it takes about minimum 2 years it takes. Because 1 year you would be preparing, and the 1 year is the examination cycle. And then if you don't get a good rank in it, you don't get your desired service or cadre, then you have to prepare again. So one is the length part of it. And second is this is not like any science or engineering exam where you write, if 2 plus 2 comes, then you write 4 and you know it's the right answer. This is such a subjective exam. Whatever I write, if somebody likes it, somebody can give me 150 for that essay, another person can give me 50 for that essay. Mm-hmm. So it's so random, it's so subjective that you really don't know whether you have done well in the exam or you have done poorly in the exam. Like last year I remember when I gave all my papers, I thought I had done very well. So I was expecting a very good rank last year. But when the marks came, I realized that I had done very poorly in essay and GS.
What were your marks in essay last year?
Essay last year I got 80, and in GS I got 170. Okay. And so this year, like when I was giving the exam, after giving the exam, I had no idea absolutely how had I done my paper.
Achha, probably this is the reason why people have such volatility in their marks. Like 1 year they'll get 220, and the next year they'll get maybe 50, maybe 60.
That's the thing, that it's very difficult to gauge what is expected or what we should look to achieve. Like in terms of our answers, in terms of our preparation, it's very difficult to know that thing, that what is really expected of us. So that is why everything goes random.
Mm-hmm. What are the initial threshold requirements according to you that a student can check for himself or herself before coming into this arena? The initial threshold. So that one can say ki theek hai.
Initial, I think, I'll just tell you from my experience, initial is that one should be interested in studying. Right? And one should see that he or she is capable of studying. I used to work earlier. I used to work before I started preparing for this exam. And before quitting my job, I took a leave for a month. I came back home. I studied all the basic books and all. And only when I realized that I can study now, and I really like to study more than I like to work, that's when I decided, yes, I should start preparing for this exam. So that, I think, is the criteria, that you have to see that you are interested in studying, you can do all these studies. That should be the minimum.
So we just started, it is basically tail end question to what I asked you. We just wanted to have your views on this, that can there be made a diagnostic test for the initial arrivals, initial student or freshers, so that post taking that a student can be apprised of his strength and weakness, or to put it more simplistically, whether he should continue preparing this examination or not. A diagnostic test.
Well, such a test, of course such a test can be made, but this thing is highly personal. And if you design a test, it's going to be a standard test. But this thing, whether one is interested in studying or not, this thing is highly personal. And you can only have the test after you have studied a bit. You cannot have this test in the beginning. If let's say I had given the test in the beginning, I would have failed because I didn't know anything, right? So the real test is, and it has to be personal, that the real test is whether one can study now for the next 2 years or not.
I have seen your interview in DD also, which you gave, that Manoj Agarwal interview. But there also, a new boy comes up, he must have some threshold level of knowledge. He must have, so a test type of a thing could be designed where one can say 30% marks, you can prepare. Like when we used to prepare, people used to say कि अगर आप GS के exam में if you can solve 25 to 30% of the questions, that means you can continue your preparation. That means your schooling education, your intermediate, your graduation is fine. you're fine with your knowledge level. So can that be done like diagnostic type?
I don't agree with this. I don't think that there should be a minimum, there should be a threshold for the knowledge level. I don't think that. Because these are not some very like scientific or some things only Einstein can understand. These are very general things. Anybody can study it, right? So it's not the initial level of knowledge which is important. It's just that the initial level of interest which is important. If somebody is interested enough, he or she can study it. He or she can learn all this. Like all these things, whatever is given in the NCERT or geography or history, all these things anybody can learn. So it's the level of interest which is important. I can tell you one thing, that I had started preparation in September 2011, and that year the mains was in October 2011. So I had already prepared for a month or so, and after that I saw the mains exam, GS mains paper, and I could not attempt more than 50 marks paper out of the 600. I could not attempt more than 50 marks. So had there been this kind of knowledge criteria, it would have suggested that I should quit.
No, an MCQ type of test where some basic questions of all the subjects could be like random.
But that comes only after studying. And these things are not that, they are not very difficult things to study. They are very easy things. If somebody is interested, he or she can study.
Because mains questions are still very difficult. Maybe they will ask critically analyze Narega scheme. Narega scheme is basically building so many things, but then critically analyze.
I had not even heard of Narega. I had not even heard of those kind of things. That 50 marks I am telling you was of things which I had heard of, which I was somewhat familiar with. I was coming from Hong Kong. Before that, I had done MBA. Who had heard about all these Narega and all these things? Nobody.
Some of the aspirants have always been clearing this exam in their very first attempt. You are example of that. You exemplify that. What makes this proposition so difficult that ordinarily it is understood that this exam needs more than one attempt? Do you agree with this or like?
See, one thing is which as I said earlier, that you don't know where you should go. You don't know what is expected, what this exam expects from you. So that is why we work hard, we do all the things, but we might not be moving in the right direction. It's only after giving an attempt or so that we realize our mistakes, that this was my problem. Like it happened to me. Last year, even though I got 244 rank, it was below my expectations. So only when my marks came, I realized that okay, I had been writing wrong sort of answers. I had been writing like an engineer. I should write like a BMA student. Right? So these are the kind of problems which one understands only after giving the exam. And the second is, I think that there is lot of dependence on coaching. Right? People think that if they have finished the syllabus in coaching, they would be able to do well in the exam. But when they actually sit in the exam, they realize that with just coaching, if they don't do anything on top of it, they won't be able to do anything. Right? So these are the mistakes one learns by experience, personal experience only. So that is why it mostly takes more than 1 hour.
Very nicely put that. I was writing answer like a technical person, but I should write answer like PMA, because basically you took that subject also humanity.
People who are checking have that kind of background.
Bilkul sahi. According to you, what technique or maybe reading style made you successful? Please elaborate on the daily routine that you followed.
Daily routine varied a lot because it's like a 2.5 year thing. Daily routine varies a lot. So I can tell you is that what I did was, whenever I used to study anything, I used to study it from the exam perspective only. I used to study it from the perspective that what might be asked in the exam from out of this topic. Okay, so if let's say there is some news, then I would try to ask what kind of question can come from this news, and I used to study only from that perspective. So that really helps in filtering out a lot of noise. Like these days, the exams, even the prelim exam, they have become a lot of issue based instead of they have become totally understanding based instead of factual.
Factual is not.
Yeah. So whenever we are studying anything, we have to study we have to understand the issue behind it, right? Not the factual things. For example, like recently whatever is happening in Iraq. So when we study, we should understand that why are these people fighting? What is the difference between this Shia Sunni Kurds? What are Kurds doing? What is this Baghdadi doing? We have to understand why is Baghdadi doing whatever he is doing. What is the role of the president, Iraqi president in it? Instead of remembering all the facts, we should understand what is the thing going on. And those are the kind of questions which are asked in the exam. Because in the exam they say critically analyze this, so you have to write the pros of it, you have to write negatives of it, and to give the way forward or your own opinion in it. So that was my approach. Like whenever, let's say in newspapers or whatever news, they never analyze an issue fully. So they would give something. Like let's say recently, like just today I read Rangarajan committee has given its report, right? So the newspaper gives only this. Then it's my job to look up for this in internet, do a Google search, get out the report, see what the recommendations are, what was the rationale behind these recommendations, right? Then do some more Googling, find out what are the expert economists, what are they saying on this report. Some may be criticizing it, some may be saying good things about it. So that's how we prepare a complete question. Because if the question comes in the exam, it is going to be the Rangarajan committee gave this report and critically analyze it. So that's when you have to say what are the positives of it, what are the negatives of it. If you now in those positives and negatives put whatever the expert economists are saying or the subject experts are saying, then the answer gets it becomes completely different. It becomes gets into a completely different league. So this is the kind of study which is needed.
So what do you think between these two options, a proper daily schedule or a long-term strategy, and what must be followed for success? Some are very finicky about following a particular sort of a routine. Okay, and somebody think, okay, we can be flexible, but flexibility not at the cost of sincerity.
Flexibility is necessary. Flexibility has to be there because some important event might come up, some important thing might come up, and you would have to sacrifice your daily schedule, whatever you were setting. For example, if let's say the budget comes day after tomorrow, right? So we will have to leave everything and study the budget. There is no alternative. So flexibility has to be there, but as you said, not at the cost of sincerity. Sincerity has to be there. Every day we have to study. We have to be focused. Fine, like there are some days on which we are not able to study, but it should not be that we should look forward to those days. Those kind of days might come, usual, but sincerity should be there. We should try to study every day.
Achha, nowadays questions ask for higher analytical requirements, not only at the mains but also at the PT level. As you said, PT is becoming more conceptual. Jumping at the answer just and by jotting down mere facts and not addressing to the actual requirement is heavily pinning on the hopes of candidate, particularly for GS papers. They are even getting 20. What do you have to say on this?
As I said earlier, the right approach, right, has to be, instead of let's say the Rangarajan committee and you just jot down this much percent poverty, this is the poverty line, and earlier the poverty line was this and this was the poverty. Instead of just these kind of things, you have to really open up the report, do a Google, see the actual report, study the entire report, make notes out of it. Then study whatever the experts are saying. There would be Rajya Sabha TV discussions on it. They should be available on YouTube. They're in half an hour they call 4 or 5 experts and they give a very good gist of the entire issue, right? So these kind of things one has to do.
Actually, even if a student knows these things, what is happening nowadays, they are basically not being able to decipher the whole content of the question. Question is also very twisted. Don't you think that critically analyze, you are being asked to critically analyze a thing which is in popular media or which is in popular conception being regarded as a good thing, but you have to critically analyze that.
So critically analyze is just that you give whatever the positive points of it are, whatever one side is, give the other side, and then give the balanced way or give your own opinion about it, the way forward. That is what is required in a critically analyzed question.
No, my purpose was basically, don't you think the questions are also increasingly being twisted in last 2 to 3 years?
Yes, definitely. Because I remember the first mains paper I saw was mains 2011. There were small questions, right? And they were actually testing the knowledge of a person, whether they had heard about this scheme or not, they had heard about that law or not. Those kind of questions are more in number. Whereas if you look at this year's paper, out of 25, 20 questions would be anybody has heard. Even if he or she is not preparing for IAS, they would have heard about the issue. After the exam, my father used to see those papers, and he knew about out of 25, he knew about 22 issues. Right? So the importance is not the knowledge these days. The importance is how well we put our thoughts, how much of mind we apply in writing the question, in thinking about the issue, and how we present it.
UPSC has initiated a new protocol by giving inbuilt answer sheet with the question paper. Nowadays they are giving. Do you think it is useful for time management, as students more often in the initial phase of allocated time tend to become less careful about time, and thus their paper, they find it difficult to finish the paper?
Well, I think it's like a bit tricky. One has to avoid falling into the trap of filling the entire space which is given, because the space which is given is like much more than what 200 words require if you have a normal handwriting and all. But like seeing like there are 2.5 pages to be filled, a person tries to go and fill the entire space. That has to be avoided. So that kind of trap has to be avoided.
But this initiative taken by UPSC, do you think it is correct? Like they are providing limited space, and like so that people
I have like no views on it. I don't think that like is such a big thing. Earlier they used to mention the amount of words. Now they mention the words and they've given. I don't think it's a big thing.
In the CSAT scenario at the prelim stage, don't you think that the model of exam has become slightly tilted in favor of convent educated? Also, students are increasingly getting through PT by scoring heavily in paper 2, whereas paper 1, that is the GS and current affairs, is more important for the latter stages of this exam, read mains and interview. So like they are basically clearing PT.
See, I think that this exam has so many papers, it is so well balanced out. Yeah, agree that paper 2 is more favorable to engineers and management students. I agree with that. But then paper 1 is more favorable to history student, geography student. Engineers know nothing about history, geography. Right? It's just that some people, they have a tendency to cry. They have a tendency to crib. So they will crib out something. Engineers will crib out paper 1. History student will crib out paper 2. So it's just this kind of thing. I think overall there are so many papers in this exam that it's very well balanced.
The introduction of English as a compulsory aspect of this examination vis-a-vis CSAT paper, the people who are coming from hinterlands, from rural background, they are increasingly crying. You must have heard about newspaper reports also. They are marching on the main lanes of Delhi. They are protesting vehemently. So what are your views regarding that?
But last year, if you look at the results of last year, all the regional languages had done exceedingly well. All the regional literature, Hindi literature, there were such fantastic results out of literature, regional language literature, Hindi literature. Nobody was crying back then. Last year UPSC punished public administration. This year, like it's like UPSC does something every year. So you cannot say that it's a trend. You cannot say it's
subjectivity.
Last year none of these people cried.
But this
ask them where were they last year? They were so happy. India is such a big country, all kind of people are there. Whatever you do or whatever you don't do, there will always be people who would cry. One has to be positive.
Do you think a separate paper on ethics, integrity and aptitude at the mains level has made this exam a complete and comprehensive test, testing the aptitude for a future bureaucrat?
Definitely, I think it's a very positive development. It's a very positive thing, because I faced these kind of things in my professional life. I've worked 3.5 years, so I know that while preparing, people say that it's just moral science. Everybody knows that we should not be telling lies. We should be honest. Everybody knows these kind of things. People do say when they are preparing, but if we haven't really given a deep thought to these kind of ethical issues in professional life, we really don't realize when we are facing such a kind of ethical dilemma, and we really don't realize when we are doing the wrong kind of thing. So, with the introduction of this paper, people are forced to now give a thought to these ethical issues, all these ethical dilemmas, and in the professional life, it's only going to help. Like when I used to work earlier in management in IAM, we never had any kind of course on ethics or any kind of thing on ethics where they told us about professional ethics and the kind of ethical situations we had faced we might not. So in my professional life, there were a few instances where I did not even realize that there was an ethical issue involved here, and I ended up doing the wrong thing. I did not even realize it because my mind was not trained to think like that. But with this kind of paper, the mind of the aspirants is trained in that direction, so that when they face these kind of situations in the professional life, they know, okay, this is an ethical situation, and at least they would give a thought to it.
According to you, what is ethical dilemma?
Well, ethical dilemma is when there are two alternatives, right? And it's very difficult to choose the alternative. They are pros and cons. They are not black and white alternatives. They are grey alternatives.
Exactly. Do you think that negative marking at PT level must be done away with?
Well, it's the same for everybody. These kind of things are really not important.
Do you think that even continuing with one option at the main stage is like walking half down the goalpost line? Don't you think that this exam
all this
should
debate about level playing field and all, right? I think that's the beauty of social sciences, that there is no correct thing. Once I saw a cartoon on WhatsApp or something, that there were 3 kids of different heights, right? And the wall was the same level. So do you call that equality? Or you put one, first, second, third leg of steps of varying heights, so that all of them are able to see what is there on the other side of the wall? Is that equality? Right? So what is level playing field? How do you define level playing field? If you force an engineer to study history, right, and you force a history student to study history, is that level playing field? Do you call it level playing field? Or you give the option to engineer to study whatever he wants and give the option to historian to study whatever he wants? Is that level playing field? Right? So all these talk about level playing field and all, I really I just think that some changes, people have some kind of agendas. They come, they have decided I am going to do these things, these kind of things, and they just then look for supporting facts and supporting things to push their agenda. That's it. Because you can very easily increase the number of optional papers from 2 to 3 and still say it's level playing field. You can very easily do away with GS and still claim that it's level playing field.
In the present notification that came out recently, UPSC has said that students may be asked to write essays on multiple topics. It was like change. You must have seen that also. Do you think that this is a good move to understand the psychology of the exam takers apart from his writing skills and other aspects of communication? Maybe time management also? Writing 2 to 3 essays in a specified time?
Definitely yes. And also it's for the first time, at least in the first year, when people see suddenly 2 or 3 essays to be written, they would come in for a shock. So it's going to test a lot of people. I think the key is not to panic. Not to panic when you see that attempt any 3 or attempt any 2. Not to panic. Immediately calculate how much time you have to give for each essay. In fact, you should know beforehand. If 3 essays come, I have to give 1 hour each or 1.5 hours each if 2 essays come. And then manage your time accordingly.
In the latest notification, one more change was there. Commission has also come out with qualifying marks for the qualifying papers. Those papers like language paper and one English paper also. Do you think such measures promoting transparency is good for the whole system?
Any measure promoting transparency?
Some general questions, very conventional type of questions, which is very useful for people who are preparing or who might come to prepare for this exam. When did you start preparation for the IAS examination, and when should one ideally begin thinking about preparing for this exam?
I started preparation in around September 2011, and I had about a year to prepare. And I felt a year's time is
What was your optional, and what was the basis of selecting that optional paper?
This year my option was economics, and the basis was I was very comfortable with economics. It was my strength, and a lot of people advised me against economics because I have no formal education in economics, but I knew economics was my strength, so that was.
What was your marks in optional?
296.
Exceptionally. Tell us something about preparation of essay paper.
In essay paper, we all read those editorials which come out in the newspaper every day. So if we are able to write that kind of quality, we are on the right path. So that should be our benchmark. And then there were also a few mistakes which I did. Basically, I wrote an engineer's essay. I went too technical into my topic and didn't cover all the trivial points, all the points that I thought were trivial. And I didn't really explain it in terms of a layman's language. So that costed me in the first attempt I got only 80. So I improved all those kind of things, and I built a lot of continuity in my essay this time. The flow was good.
Flow.
So this time I scored 135.
Which is the most difficult part of this examination and why? What was your strategy to tackle this difficult part? Most difficult part, maybe PT, maybe mains, maybe interview.
Most difficult is, of course, actually the most difficult part is after mains, like between mains and interview, because that's the part when most of us, they end up wasting time, and we have a lot of apprehensions, we have a lot of anxiety, and most of the people are not able to prepare during that time because we don't know whether we should study for the interview or for the next attempt. So that is the most difficult part, and I was not able to do anything about it.
Did you integrate your prelims and mains, or was it like
integrate because I was good in CSAT, right? And I looked at the prelims paper. I felt that if I study well for the mains GS, I would do well in prelims GS as well, because the nature of prelims paper is changing to more conceptual based now. So there is, in terms of the common topics, there is really no difference now between studying for mains and studying for prelims, except for answer writing. Right? In terms of preparation, there is really no difference. So if you are studying well for the mains GS, you would do well in the prelims GS as well. So in both although I never studied especially for prelims, exclusively for prelims, in my both attempts, I did well in the prelims GS also. In first attempt, I think I got like 130 something in GS1, and in my second attempt, I got like 125 something, 122 or something in GS1.
Did you prepare notes? How helpful are the notes? What is your advice on note making?
Yes, I prepared notes. I prepared online notes, and it took me a lot of time to prepare notes, but ultimately they were very helpful. They were very helpful because of 2-3 reasons. One is, in the exam, right? Now they are asking 25 questions. So you have to not only you have to write well, but you have to think also very quickly and think quality points very quickly. So that kind of thing can come only when you have internalized everything. That kind of thing will not come if, let's say, you have learned something by heart, you have memorized something, because in the exam you will forget that. But only if you have internalized the things, only then you will have quality recall and quick recall.
Quality recall is like
quality recall and quick recall. So that is one thing which notes aid in, because with notes, like, you prepare it in your own structure, you give their own structure, you prepare it in your own format, own words, so that really helps. And second is, with notes, it really helps in revising the syllabus. So although it took me a lot of time to make the notes for the first time, but after that I was able to revise my syllabus 3-4 times.
Did you attend any coaching institute? How helpful are coaching institute? What is your overall opinion about it?
Yes, I attended a lot of coaching institutes, and most of the classroom coaching institutes I found a waste of time and highly unprofessional. But I think the really useful part is the test series and the mock interviews, because they help in evaluation. They help by giving us external feedback, right? Because that is the kind of mindset, you can say, of the examiners as well. So this feedback which you get from the test series and the mock interviews, that really helps as a check.
What would be your suggestion, or rather advice, for freshers who want to join coaching institutes for preparation?
I think they should rely more on their strength, because dependency on anybody else is anyways not useful either for this exam or for your entire life. One should rely more on his or her own strength and study, because every person is different. What somebody else might find useful, I might find total waste of my time. Right? So more emphasis in this exam has to be on studying.
What was your style of writing in the exam? How was it distinct from general writing style? How did you develop this writing style?
Well, in my first attempt, especially like in GS, I wrote to the point answers. Like they asked about some topic, I wrote about that topic, and I thought I had written very good answers because I had done a PhD in those topics. I studied those topics really well, and if let's say there were 5 or 6 issues in that topic. For example, last year there was a question on Nepal, whatever was going on in Nepal. So in Nepal there were like 6 or 7 issues. But the main issue at that time was federalism, that of federalism. So I studied federalism and all those, what Madhesis are saying, what Janjatis are saying, what this UML is saying, what this is saying, that is saying exceedingly well. And I had written all those things beautifully in that answer. But what happened was, because I wrote federalism in such great detail, I missed out on other points. Right? I did not write those other 5-6 points. But when the examiner comes and checks, right, he is not the ambassador, Indian ambassador to Nepal. Right? He is a general person who is just checking our answer sheet, not because he has any interest in that, but because this is her job. Right? So they won't be looking to learn new things out of our answers. They will just see there are 6 points in Nepal, so this person has only covered 1 point. So if the question is of 20 marks, they would give me marks out of 4, not out of 20. So for such a beautiful answer also, beautiful like if somebody, if some expert takes it, they would still give me 2 out of 20. Right? So this year what I did was, I realized that was a mistake I was doing last year. So this year what I did was, first of all, whatever are the points, if let's say there are 5 or 6 points in Nepal, I would try to stress my mind and think of like a couple of additional points as well. Just like cover all the relevant points. First you just cover all the relevant points. They ask about Nepal, say federalism, this, that, everything which is going on in Nepal, relevant, not completely, goes off. And then the second thing is, if they ask about a certain issue, then not only do we have to write about that issue, but in the beginning we also have to write about what came before that issue, like why is that issue important. And then in the end we have to write about what is the way forward for this. So that makes our answer a complete answer from a BA/MA perspective.
Very nicely put. That particular person, if I am writing something on Nepal, that particular person is not ambassador to Nepal. And he is doing his work because he is being paid for that work.
He won't understand half the things I am saying.
Very nicely, very nicely.
And if he doesn't understand something, he won't, take all the pain to go and learn about all those things.
Maybe it is very beautiful. Maybe it is very beautiful. But for him, he is simple words. He has to see those punchlines.
Yes.
How helpful is one's background in his or her success for this examination?
I think this exam is so well balanced and so diverse that background is not really important. What really matters is how one approaches this exam. I had a completely different kind of background, but still I qualified. There are many medical students who qualified, there are many art students who qualified. So it's just that how we approach this exam, this particular exam, that is important.
Please, can you elaborate about your background, maybe what your father does?
Well, my father is an engineer. He's a manager of engineering section in Jaipur Dairy, right? And I am an engineer as well. After that, I did MBA and worked in investment bank. But basically, my entire mind is very like focused and result oriented and analytical, right? If let's say you give me a problem, I'll think about solving that problem. I won't go about this way and this way. Like I won't go around the problem. I won't beat around the problem. Right? Beating around the bush is not the right term because, but still, like I would simply go to the solution. Right? I would not tell you that why this problem has arisen, what is the importance of this problem, right? And if the solution which I have given, what is the importance of the solution? If the solution is not perfect, then what are the negatives of that solution, and how those negatives can be overcome? Right? This is not beating about the bush. These are still relevant things, but these have to be given. An engineer will only give a solution, but all these other things a consultant gives. A strategy consultant maybe. Those working in McKinsey or in these kind of companies, they would give these kind of things.
Does this exam provide a level playing field for the rural or poor economic background candidates with the conventional middle urban class types with whom they have to compete against?
I think the diversity of this exam does provide and a fair bit of opportunity for any person with any kind of background. Last year, lot of we had very good results from all the regional languages, Hindi languages. Hindi medium too. Last year they were excellent results. So the aberration might happen this year. UPSC might, because let's say last year literature subjects went so well, so this year maybe they punish those kind of things. But overall, like with such a diverse kind of papers and such a diverse paper, I think it provides more or less level fair.
But still, this volatility in paper from let's say 1 year to next year, as you said that this paper was punished. So this volatility, don't you think that this basically brings in lots of subjectivity into the whole domain?
Arts is subjective, social science is subjective, real life is subjective. That's like the difficulty an engineer faces when he comes into this field, because he thinks that I have the solution, I have the right thing. Whatever, not he, but whatever, this person says the right thing. But that is the beauty of real life. There is no right thing. People might think Modi is the right man, people might think Modi is the wrong man. There is no right thing.
Life is subjective.
Life is like this.
Everybody has his own philosophy, and you must not question that philosophy.
So these things are not in our control. What UPSC does, it's really not in our control.
Exactly.
What is in our control is that we just give our best. That's it. That is what we should do.
What is the best strategy to prepare for interview?
In fact, the preparation of interview starts from the moment we are filling our DAF. Because most of the questions, usually, most of the questions are asked from our DAF only. If one looks at the DAF, one can predict these are the kind of questions would be asked, usually. If let's say there is a person who has just done his or her college, and after that given UPSC and selected to the interview, then there won't be a lot of questions to ask from that person's background, right? He's just finished his college. What are you going to ask from him? You can ask a few questions from the college or from the whatever his subject was, right? But then the focus from that person would be more towards, let's say, his or her state, right? Or whatever is the current thing which is going on, right? Or some factual questions like constitution and whatever, because there are not a lot of questions to ask from that person. On the other hand, if let's say a person has been very good in sports in his college, he has been playing cricket throughout his life, has played at national level or whatever level, state level, and all this, then it's natural that the theme of the interview would be sports based. Not exactly cricket questions, but then why these sports is not doing well, it's cricket to be blamed, why we're not doing well in these kind of sports and all these kind of things. Right? In my case, my DF, the theme of my DAF was economics. I had an MBA in finance, but then generally people who take interviews it's very low probability that they would have studied finance. But economics is something everybody knows about finance. Finance and economics are related, so one economics point in my DAF goes from there. Then in my hobby there was economics, right? Then in my job was about economics. My option was economics. So in my case, how many non-economics questions would they ask? They might, of course, take the entire interview in non-economics questions, but the probability, we are just talking about probabilities. So in a normal case, they would ask 80% of the questions from me from economics only. So my job would be to study what are the relevant questions, what are the relevant issues going on in economics. Because the people who are taking my interview, they have not studied for my interview, right? I studied for my interview. They are just normal people who read normal newspapers and they come to take my interview because it's their job to take interviews, right? So they are only going to ask current questions, unless somebody is an economist, which again there is a low probability.
Exactly. Making interview interesting also puts in lots of difference, like providing an answer. Let's say you are being asked something on inflation. Okay. So in the first sentence only, if you make the whole thing very interesting, so maybe succeedingly they will ask questions only on inflation only. So in a way you can basically direct the flow of interview, which becomes very beneficial.
Exactly. And in the interview, right, we don't have the luxury to go on speaking like I'm speaking now. It's just like in 2-3 sentences, you have to impact them.
You have to give a structured answer.
So the best thing is, because you know what questions are going to be asked, give a thought. Give a thought to those questions before while you are preparing, and then interview deliver.
Which type of questions were asked in the interview from you?
Mostly economics based questions, and there were some questions from my other background, like some questions from the Chinese society, I was born in Bharatpur, so there were questions related to Bharatpur, that Kevladev National Park. Then they went into environment, then came to social cost. Then there was a news about that Ambani taking over TV18.
Yes.
So they asked me whether
Media.
is this kind of thing good or not? How can we like prevent the harms of it? These kind of things. So most of it was related to my profile only.
And did you answer them all?
I could not answer two questions. One was what is the difference between sanctuary, wildlife sanctuary, national park and biosphere reserves, and the second one was what is the difference between vision, mission, goal and target, aim and target. Yeah, aim and goal.
Must be related to paper 4, I presume.
Also, like my management background, management people are expected to know all this.
Share some interesting moments from your interview, maybe, which could be of like interesting read to our readers and aspirants as well.
Well, not this year, but last year definitely I had an interesting moment. Last year my board was IMG Khan board, and towards the end of the interview they asked me, have you read this year's the latest issue of the Economist magazine? So I said no. So they told me on the cover page there is a cat, and that cat is looking at herself in the mirror and is seeing the reflection of a tiger, and that was in context of India. That India is actually a low power and it thinks that it's a superpower.
Exactly.
So he asked me my opinion on it. I just said that I think instead of the cat, it should be cub of a tiger. That becoming the tiger is a destiny. We are not yet the tiger, becoming the tiger is a destiny.
Very nicely. Who are the persons who really believed in you, and assisted you through all the thick and thins of this long?
My family. My family throughout they were very supportive, and as you must have heard that I was working in Hong Kong. I had a very nice job there, and usually when people leave that kind of job to come for this uncertain thing, there is a resistance from the family, there is a resistance from the parents. But in my case, they had complete faith in my ability, and they were actually happy that I'm finally coming back to India and I'm going for this exam.
What is your advice to the freshers who are going to appear in this examination?
Well, I would just say in this exam, have the courage. Have the courage to see your failures. Have the courage to see that you have not done well in a particular test. Have the courage to see that you have not scored well. Because these are the kind of things which, if you realize before the main exam, then only you will be able to improve in the exam. Or if you realize these kind of mistakes, for example, most of us, many of us, they who have not prepared well, they tend to avoid giving all the mock tests because they think that they are not going to score well in it. So what? Our aim is not to score well in those mock tests. Our aim is to learn from those mock tests what our weaknesses are, focus on them so that we can do well in our main test. Similarly, many of us, we don't have the courage to accept our mistakes. We just blame everything on luck or God or this and that. Right? Last year I got so poor marks in GS and essay. Right? But instead of blaming everything on this and that, I tried to find out where my mistake was. And I realized where my mistake was, and then I tried to improve on it. So one should have this kind of courage.
Courage to look at weakness is very important for life as well. Very. What is your advice to the candidates who have failed in this exam? Very important question.
Well, don't just start working in the blind, right? Don't work कहते हैं ना वो बैल की तरह काम मत करो, right? कि just फिर से वही सब करने लग जाओ, right? Because that thing has obviously not worked. Whatever you have done so far, that thing has obviously not worked. So don't blindly repeat that thing. Sit down, take a moment, ask yourself what mistakes have I done, where have I failed, what are my weaknesses. Identify those weaknesses. Only that person can know whatever weaknesses he or she has done. So do an honest analysis, identify the weaknesses, and then focus on those weaknesses.
What is the best way to prepare current affairs? But even before that, tell us something about the increasing weightage on GS portion in the whole.
Well, GS, at least this year, the GS weightage has increased only on paper. Effectively, they have given so little marks in GS, so less marks in GS, and that the real weightage of GS is still that of last year.
Because everybody is scoring low.
Everybody,
So that,
this is a relative exam.
Mhm.
What matters is the difference of marks, right? So they've given everybody so little marks in GS that even if somebody does well in GS, he or she might be like 30 marks above the average, 50 marks above the average, not more than that. On the other hand, in option, if one does well, one goes like 100 marks above the average.
what was your marks in GS this time?
GS, out of 1000, my marks were 338, and in option, out of 500, it was 296. So for me, actually, the weightage of option in GS is same, almost the same.
398. According to you, what should be the criteria or criterion to select an optional paper for means?
Purely based on strength.
Interest.
Interest is actually a kind of deceptive word, because initially, when we have not, initially, we might think that we are interested in something
Okay.
without really exploring that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We might be interested in 2 or 3 subjects.
Mm-hmm.
I face so many queries these days. I'm interested in this and this and this and this. What should I choose? Right? So the proper thing is that if you're interested in something, study that subject for 10 days. Study that subject for a couple of weeks. Then see where you stand, whether you can understand that subject, whether you can study it for long hours, whether you are really interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you an idea of your strength, whether you are strong in